A growing number of men in Oklahoma prisons are asking judges for a second look at their sentences under the Oklahoma Survivors Act. That law passed in 2024. It allows victims of sexual or domestic abuse to petition for reduced sentences or even new trials if their abuse was a major factor in their crime. KOCO's Kylie Thomas looks at the data and the complex cases behind it.
Not just domestic violence limited between either a domestic partner, a boyfriend, girlfriend, but it's broader than that and it's intended to be.
Roughly 1 in 3 people applying under the Oklahoma Survivors Act are men. The Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice says prosecutors have identified 33 total applications statewide, including 12 from men. In Oklahoma County, 2 of those cases involved Brian Gregory and Joshua Thomas Bryant. Bryant's case made headlines in 2017 when the Edmonton was sentenced to 40 years for killing his stepmother. Now he's asking for resentencing, claiming years of sexual abuse by his stepmom led up to the killing, which he says happened as he tried to stop another assault, writing, "I lost control, I could not handle it anymore, and I killed her."
Think about the breadth of the law. It includes human trafficking. That could certainly be male or female. It includes parents. That equally applies to any gender.
In a separate case, Brian Gregory is seeking relief decades after a 1994 Oklahoma City murder. Court filings say he was a teenager when an older man sexually abused him, controlled his life with drugs, and forced him into prostitution. Gregory argues that abuse was a major factor when he shot a customer during a robbery. So far, only one person, Lisa Wright, has received sentencing relief under the law.
But to get relief, to get resentencing under the act, we also have to show that the abuse that our client suffered was a substantial contributing factor to the crime they committed. And that's where courts are not agreeing with us, that the abuse is a substantial contributing factor.
And Kylie Thomas joining us here for Oklahoma Chronicle. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I want to talk about the 2 gentlemen that you referenced in that, and they're 2 very different cases, it seems. But I want to start with something that the gentleman just said. Substantial contributing factor. That is what is needed to prove to a judge in order for somebody to use the Survivors Act to their benefit. We've talked about that on this program before. Just the fact that it's written into the law, but how it's being used, how it's being interpreted, it just seems like it's so broad, so potentially vague.
Yeah, that's right. And it's supposed to be broad. That's what self-defense attorneys are saying, is that it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It doesn't have to be between a boyfriend and girlfriend, wife, husband, any type of partner relationship. This can include human trafficking survivors. This can include, child-parent relationships. So it's supposed to be broad so that anyone who has been a victim of domestic abuse or sexual abuse can show that their abuse played a significant role in their crime. But that's the sticky point.
Substantial contributing factor. What does that mean, right?
Right.
Is that where a lot of judges and defense attorneys are really butting heads?
Yes. To this day, only one person has been successful in applying and getting relief under the Oklahoma Survivors Act, and that's Lisa Wright. She spent 34 years in prison, and so far she's the only applicant who has been granted relief. She's the only one that the court has agreed, has showed that her abuse played that much of a role in her crime.
And so even though we're talking about, today your story was about the men, the third of these applicants being men, but that challenge of proving the substantial contributing factor, that's impacting the men and the women right now.
That's right. Of the 33 applicants so far that prosecutors are building a case against, 12 of them are men.
Right.
And anyone can be a victim. It can be a man, it can be a woman, so it is broad, but that is the sticky point.
And Kylie, this is not a stand your ground law. You know, the lawmakers who wrote this, and you've spoken to one of them, they are clear that this is not meant to be done as something where you are being abused in the moment and then it gives you the right to do that, because we already have that law, right?
Yes, that's right.
This is a very different type of thing, theoretically.
Yes, theoretically, this is not a stand your ground law. They don't have to prove that their abuse was happening in that moment, in that day, in the week ahead. It could have been years. It could have been prolonged abuse that that played a significant role in the crime. But that is the question: did their abuse cause them to commit this crime? And that's where courts aren't agreeing with these self-defense attorneys.
Right, and in your story that we just showed, the two different gentlemen who are now applying for relief, I was struck by how different their cases were, because one was actually saying that, you know, this young man actually, you know, killed his abuser, right?
Yeah.
The other one, though, was saying that he was abused, and then years later, because of that abuse, or it was a contributing factor, killed somebody who had nothing to do with the abuse during a robbery. So that struck, you know, when you talk about substantial contributing factor, I mean, they're asking very different things from the judges in this situation.
That's right. In that case specifically, where the victim wasn't the accused abuser.
Right.
The abuser was in the situation. So they have to prove that the abuser still caused that situation to happen.
Okay, so the abuser was somehow present.
That's right.
With that crime. Can you walk me through how this plays out? Because I know it's not just, it's not simple. There's multiple steps here, right?
Yeah, the legal system is never simple from what we've discovered. But yes, in these cases, a survivor has to plead their case, has to gather all of their evidence and provide that to a judge, basically asking to apply for the Oklahoma Survivors Act. And then a judge has to look over all of those findings and find that there has to be substantial proof or evidence that this abuse did play a factor, and then that application is granted, and then the process unfolds where they will have hearings and potentially get up to a trial where their case will be retried, and they'll have to have that abuse displayed in front of a courtroom.
So you apply to a judge, and the judge then basically says, okay, you can actually seek this relief, but then you still have to go and seek the relief. It's not a guarantee if the judge gets you through that first step that you're actually going to get your sentence reduced.
Yeah, that's right. It's not a guarantee. You have to apply basically for the application to be considered, and then you have to go through this whole process.
You've been covering this, you know, basically since this law was passed. It's still a relatively new law within the last couple of years, right?
Yes.
2024?
2024 is when it was passed, and it still feels kind of like the Wild West, because all of these cases are still being tried right now. But again, only one has been successful. So district attorneys and defense attorneys are going through all these cases to try and create case law precedent to see what's going to stick here in Oklahoma and what cases are going to be successful and what aren't.
Is there, we didn't talk about this beforehand, was there something about the one person who got her application applied, got her out of prison earlier than her sentence was there something about that case that set her apart?
I don't know. When I had the opportunity to sit down across from Lisa Wright and ask her about her story, she spent 34 years in prison for killing her abuser, her husband, and
the abuse was horrible. I remember
yes,
that story.
It was prolonged. It was a horrific case, and she sat across from me, and what so struck me is that she thought that by her, you know, winning her case and telling her story, that would open the floodgates for all of these other survivors, and it just hasn't. And that has been incredibly frustrating for other survivors who are going through the process and the defense attorneys. But she said something that really stuck with me, was that the Oklahoma Survivors Act, it doesn't erase the guilt. That's not the point of this act. It's basically acknowledging that this person suffered abuse, prolonged abuse, and that abuse played a real factor in the crime that they're committed. So it's giving them a little bit of relief, but their guilt doesn't just go away. You know, a jury proved that they were guilty of their crime.
Kylie, we appreciate the reporting. You've been on it, as I mentioned, for a while, and I know that we're going to have more updates to come. Thanks so much for talking and spending a little bit more time with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.